Okay, let's talk about the ego. We often think of it as this, enemy we have to fight or defeat. But what if that's not it at all? What if it's actually a powerful force we just need to understand and discipline? Today, we're going to go on a journey to find that balance, to totally reframe the relationship we have with our own selves.
So, to kick things off, let's get on the same page with this word, hypothetical. It just means we're dealing with ideas, with what ifs, not necessarily hard facts. It's asking us to kind of step back from what we think we know about the self for a minute and just be open to a new possibility, a totally different way of looking at the very core of who we are.
And here it is, the big question at the heart of all this. What if the ego, that voice in your head, that sense of I, isn't actually who you are? What if it's more like a tool you've been handed? Like a key, something you've been entrusted with, something designed to unlock a much deeper understanding of the world and, yeah, of yourself.
Now, if you can make that mental shift, it's a total game changer. I mean, think about it. The moment you start seeing yourself as a responsibility, as a trust, instead of as your boss, everything looks different. Suddenly those impulses towards, selfishness or cruelty, they start to lose their power. Why? Because you're not just serving your own whims anymore. You're taking care of this incredible, precious gift. Okay, but let's be real. This is not easy. Not at all. The big challenge is that the self, in its natural state, is pretty raw and untrained. Before it can be this amazing tool we're talking about, it has to be disciplined. So let's break down what we're actually working with here. What are the raw materials inside?
It really boils down to 3 core inner powers that we all have. First, there's desire. It's that force that's always pulling us toward things. Then you've got anger, which is the opposite. It's pushing us away from things. And finally, there's intelligence, which is supposed to be the one directing the other 2. Now, if you just let these run wild, well, you get chaos. But if you can discipline them, if you can get them working together, that's when they become the very foundation of wisdom and justice. And this process of disciplining yourself, it doesn't happen overnight. It happens in stages. You can think of it like leveling up. We all kind of start at level 1, the evil, commanding self. This is the part of us that just acts on pure, unchecked impulse. But then, with a little self-awareness, we can get to level 2, the self-criticizing self. This is where we start to actually see our own flaws and try to fix them. And the ultimate goal, level 3, is to reach the contented self. That's a state of real balance and inner peace.
But like any journey, this one has its pitfalls. There are traps along the way. And the undisciplined self is, well, pretty clever. It has all these little tricks to keep us stuck right where we are. Let's dig into one of the biggest and most common traps of all, the blame game. And this is where you see some serious hypocrisy in action. Check this out. When we make a bad choice and things go wrong, what does the ego do? It immediately says, oh, that was just fate, it wasn't my fault. But when something good happens, when we get a blessing, that same ego jumps up and takes all the credit. Yep, that was all me. I did that. It's such a classic move of the undisciplined self.
So the big question is, how do we stop falling for these traps? How do we actually make progress on this path? Well, it means we have to move beyond just, understanding the problem and start actively walking the path. And this path, it turns out, has 2 absolutely critical parts. It really comes down to this. You need both an aim and a way. Your aim is your why. It's knowing why you want to change, what your goal is. But that's not enough, right? You also need a way. That's your how. You have to know how you're actually going to get there. I mean, knowing you want to go to a city is great, but it's pretty useless if you don't have a map or a car to get you there. And this right here is a powerful idea to carry with you every single day, almost like a mantra. My aim needs a way, just as my way also needs an aim. It's a constant reminder to check in with yourself. Hey, is the thing I'm doing, my how, still actually serving my ultimate goal, my why? And am I doing it all with sincerity, with modesty, and with fairness? So, a huge part of your way, of your method, is this concept of keeping your authenticity. And listen, this isn't about being perfect. Nobody is. It's about trying not to get polluted, not getting sidetracked by negative thoughts or actions. But here's the most important part. When you do get contaminated, because hey, we're human, it's going to happen, it's about having a way to get cleaned again, a way to get back to your true, balanced self. And when you put it all together, this consistent practice of finding your aim, following your way, and always returning to that authentic center, it builds into something really profound. This is way more than just self-help. Keeping this kind of inner balance is, in a very real sense, keeping your nobility. All right, so we've talked about the path, the challenges, the practice, but what's the destination? What's the payoff for all this hard work? What does the world actually look like when you see it from the perspective of a disciplined, balanced, and truly contented self? Well, the outcome is what you might call a holistic or a unified perspective. A mind that's in balance doesn't see all these different areas of life as being in conflict with each other. Things like science, art, ethics, law, even religion. They stop being these competing, separate boxes. Instead, they all become harmonious lenses, just different ways of looking at one single, beautiful, integrated reality. And that brings us to one last, really critical question to think about. On one hand, you have just people who surrender themselves to accountability, to a principle that's higher than their own ego. On the other hand, you have oppressors who surrender to nothing but their own untrained self. So, which path do you think really requires more strength? Because in the end, after all that hard work, the discipline, the journey into self-awareness, the worldview that you're left with isn't cynical or broken. It's whole. And it turns out that a truly holistic perspective, one that can finally see the harmony in everything, is almost always a deeply positive one.